snap it, and it's Trey Burton who throws caught. Foles, touchdown.
Here he goes. It's Hester. Inside the 30. Hester's going to take it all the way for a touchdown.
Fields stumbling, trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown!
Hurts on first down, fires downfield. It's Deshaun Jackson back in the lineup. Missed the last 7 games, and he will take it 81 yards. A somersault into the end zone. His first touchdown of the season.
You're listening to The Pigskin Project, the world's #1 football podcast. Now, with more insights on all things football, here are your hosts, Ben Hansen and Ryan Matthews.
Ben Hansen and Matt Hartman. Ryan is not with us today. He just wanted to take a step back from watching football for a second. That Chiefs-Bills game had him very heated. So he's just taking a step back. Nothing's wrong with him. He's fine. He will be on the podcast next week. But again, he's stepping away. He's having a fun weekend. He mentioned on the podcast last week he's going to WWE here in Indy. So he's going to enjoy himself. But Matt, how you doing?
I'm good. I mean, it's sad to be a man down both on the podcast and in the coaching search. Saints still have no head coach. So, and feels like the candidates are just dropping like flies. So
it is ridiculous how many, and I mean, I guess we'll jump right into it. The plan for this week is kind of the news, which is basically just coaching, looking at these conference championship games, and then what we're all here for, the beautiful mock draft. But I guess we will jump right into the coaching, and we'll jump right into the coaching with the Saints. I mean, both Mike McCarthy and Joe Brady, and tell me if I have this wrong, both pulled their names out of the coaching search, leaving it with no one but Kellen Moore at this point. And as a Saints fan, how are you doing? Thoughts on Kellen Moore? Thoughts on maybe someone else other than Kellen Moore if he decides to pull himself out of the job as well? How are you taking all this?
Yeah, the McCarthy stuff was always interesting to me because it felt like any insider was just connecting the Saints to McCarthy. McCarthy never interviewed for the Saints head coaching job. So it was never like this, both were interested. Either the Saints were out or the McCarthy was out. I think McCarthy was focused on the Bears, and once that kind of deteriorated, he kind of took a step back. But I could be wrong. Joe Brady was a hot name, and he pulled out at the right time. And then Cliff Kingsbury was never a real candidate. He never interviewed, and he said it before the playoff run. He was likely going to stay. But, yeah, it's down to 3. It's Mike Kafka, the Giants offensive coordinator, former quarterback at Northwestern, Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator with the Dolphins, and then, of course, Kellen Moore. All signs are pointing to Kellen Moore. I would, it doesn't matter who the coach is for me. I feel like this team needs to go under, remember the Texans a few years ago? When they hired David Culley and Lovie Smith, and they kind of just reset themselves. It didn't really matter who was coaching the team because they were going to go through a reset. And I don't know if that's the case. I hope it's the case because this team is in a very dire situation, talent-wise, roster-wise, and cap-wise. So I'm excited for Kellen Moore. I think going young offensive guy who's played, he's called plays for a while now. Now he's doing it in Philly, and they're in the Super Bowl. So, but then again, you look at the talent level. You're watching the talent level every week with Philly. There's no way that's coming with him to New Orleans.
Hey, you could always pull you could always pull a Patriots fan and try to convince yourself that AJ is going to be on the way over there. Now that you guys hired Patriots fans are wild. Yeah, with what money? No, are you leaning one way in terms of Kellen or Kafka, because Kafka's been a name that's been floated around there for what seems to be like not Saints specifically, but just head coaching jobs like in general for like the last like 5 years. It seems like he's been a guy that's floated around.
I'm fascinated by Kafka because he's been with the Giants and he's been a name linked to everybody for a long time, but he's never called plays. So it's like the appeal of him is different than, a Ben Johnson or a Liam Cohen, who we'll talk about. Like, those guys have true track records calling plays at an elite level, where Kafka has been on the Giants. They've not done anything remotely close to what the Buccaneers and Lions did this past season, but I don't lean any certain way. I just want there to be a coach to, fly my takes. I don't really have a take on anybody. It's just the roster needs help. I mean, it doesn't matter who the coach is coming in for me.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be a hard reset, and we're just talking about it briefly before we entered in. It seems like that's like what needs to happen. It just needs to say like, screw all, we're gonna reset everything. But we have a long off season ahead of us to talk about the Saints and their plans. But we had the other 3 spots open for head coaching get closed, obviously outside of the Saints. That was Schottenheimer to the Cowboys, Liam Cohen and his infamous Duuvaall to the Jags, which is a crazy situation in its own right, which we'll get into in a second. And then Pete Carroll to the Raiders, which of all of the hirings, the only one that I really like is the Liam Cohen hiring. The Brian Schottenheimer, it's just another puppet for Jerry Jones. And as much as I love Pete Carroll, he's old, man. I don't even if he gets the ship turned around, he's going to be out of here in like 5 years. Please,
Can I talk you into the Pete Carroll? I think if it's true that Tom Brady is running the ship there, it felt like he wanted to go one of 2 directions. Either I want to get the best candidate who can reinvent this offense right away, Ben Johnson. He swung and missed on Ben Johnson. Well, I'm going to go the other route. I'm going to go the program builder, the CEO, the just overall roster management head coach. And that's what Pete Carroll has done since 2000 when he went to USC. And then in Seattle in the 2010s, he has transformed programs and made them into winning programs at one time or another. So if you can just bring in Carroll for, it's a 3-year contract with a 4th-year option if he wants to keep coaching, I think he's going to bring the energy. I think I'm excited for Pete Carroll because he's going to bring a real energy with a pedigree of I've won where I go. And they have a lot of money. They have a lot of free agents, kind of younger free agents, Malcolm Kuntz, Trayvon Merrick on the defensive side that I would like to see them keep. But overall, they have a foundation of, Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, Brock Bowers this past season, and they hit on some draft picks on the offensive line. So it's not like this glaring need to find talent on the offensive line. So I'm really excited. It's just all about getting that quarterback, and what maybe we talk about a quarterback today going to them, but just overall, it's exciting. I'm excited for Pete Carroll to be back in the league. He's I love seeing him chomping the gum on the
that was my favorite. The Raiders social media team, like when it like kind of got announced that he got hired, they just like posted a picture of just like a big wad of gum, and that was it. Yep. And I absolutely loved that. That was fantastic. And then I guess your thoughts on the other 2 head coaches before I kind of speak my piece there.
Yeah, Schottenheimer, whatever, Jerry. If Jerry doesn't care about his football team, why should I? Because this is, again, just the most boring hire. Brian Schottenheimer was not on the head coaching list for anybody, but he was upgraded to the head coach of the biggest market, the biggest sports marketable team in the country, in the world maybe. And this is what Jerry does. Jerry, the minute he, comes out and says, I don't want Mike McCarthy. Remember that same day there was a playoff game, the Vikings and Rams, and Deion Sanders was stealing the headlines about how he was going to be the Dallas Cowboys head coach? That's what Jerry does. Jerry either goes big or he goes boring, and he went as boring as possible. And it makes me wonder, it makes me wonder that why did Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones waste each other's time? Maybe there's like, they don't like each other, which I could understand, but
Yes.
neither one of them really wanted to let the other one go. But McCarthy must have went in there and said, I want more money, and Jerry being cheap and not wanting to give him more money, because that's the thing about coaches. They don't charge to the salary cap. That's what's interesting about it. And so it just felt like it wasted a bunch of time, and I guess Brian Schott, it's not about if it works, like he could work. He could be a good coach because the roster is super talented, but in the end, the process was horrible. And then we talk about other process. We talk about Jacksonville, Liam Cohen.
That was wild.
So Liam Cohen, for backstory, so we talked last time on this podcast last Wednesday, and Cohen said he was staying with the Bucs, and then the Jags fired Trent Baalke that same day. So over the course of the next 2 days, all this news breaks that Liam Cohen is not answering the Bucs calls. He is not in Tampa Bay. He is on a flight to Jacksonville, and he is in the facility with Jacksonville. And the caveat to it was the Raiders were also interviewing former Raiders defensive coordinator Patrick Graham, who was part 2 of the Rooney Rule. So they needed Graham in the building because you need 2 in-person black interviews to pass the Rooney Rule. And so Liam Cohen is actively in the building while Patrick Graham is actively interviewing for the head coach. Fascinating stuff. And now Patrick Graham is a favorite to be the defensive coordinator. So I only could imagine what that head coaching interview was like. Our guy's in the building, dude. We're just passing protocols right now. Do you want to be our DC? We really like you as a defensive coordinator, but overall, I think Cohen, as goofy as he is, as goofy as the press conferences are, as goofy as the Duuvaaalll is, if you call plays and you maximize Trevor Lawrence and you win games, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Exactly.
So that's my biggest thing with him, is that I'm not going to read into these press conferences. I'm not going to read into these head coaching hires, because the least desirable head coaching hire a year ago at this time, well, Dan Quinn just played in the conference championship game. So we don't know anything about these coaches. We don't know what they can handle. Going from offensive coordinator, play caller to actively the head coach is a big step that no one really, can process right away. We just have to see it play out, see what you're doing in the offseason, and go from there.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have said it and I could not have said any of that any better. Like, it was fun to clown on Cohen a little bit because of the whole Duuvaaalll stuff. But I mean, this is coming from an Eagles fan. I think it's like no one brings up how bad Nick's opening press conference was. Yeah. At the time when it was happening, everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, like who is this clown?" No one talks about it now because he's playing in his second Super Bowl in 3 years.
Yeah.
The same thing with Dan Campbell. People were clowning on him, and look at him. It just it never gets brought up. So if he can come and produce and turn the ship around and get Trevor Lawrence at least back to at least where he was a year previously, then no one's going to remember that press conference at all. The funny thing about that whole situation, as you walk through it with like signing the new contract as the OC, becoming like the highest paid assistant coach, and then actually not signing it, was the fact that he used his sick daughter as like an excuse. So when he wasn't answering those phone calls, like you said, he was like, "Oh, I'm with my sick daughter at like the doctor's," which is just an absolutely like wild excuse to use when you're actively like in the Jaguars building at this point. I thought it was funny.
Well, that's the thing too, is that with Tampa Bay, they're not letting like their staff go with them now. They're like, "No, you can go anywhere else, but you're not going to Jacksonville." And I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, and I don't blame him. I mean, he kind of he stiffed him a bit.
They felt hurt by this.
As they should, though. As they should, again. But, I mean, as we're seeing, again, all of it was the bulky stuff. And they came out early, very, very early after the season ended for them, saying that, like, we will fire him if the right guy becomes available. And the right guy became available for them, and it sounded like the caveat was, you need to fire Bulky, and then I will come into the building. And that's exactly what happened. Like you said, they fired Bulky, and then a day and a half later, here we are, Liam Cohen's the head coach.
Yeah, that's simple.
Yeah, it really is that simple. Kind of just very quickly running through kind of other hires. And as I miss things, you can fill in the gap as well. Steve Wilkes is the DC now for the Jets. Doyle and Dennis Allen are the OC and DC respect. They're the OC and DC for the Bears. Robert Saleh is now back in his position before he got hired with the Jets as the DC for the Niners. And then Josh McDaniels, which I think is probably the worst assistant coaching hire of the entire cycle, is back as the OC for the Patriots. None of them really are like quite needle movers for me besides the Saleh, going back to the Niners. We saw how good he was when he was the DC there. And then on the flip side was the Josh McDaniels hiring back there as the OC for the Patriots. It just didn't make any sense to me. It seemed like, again, he was a product of having Tom Brady, a product of Bill Belichick. We've seen what he's done when those guys aren't around. And that kind of left me, scratching my head.
We forget about McDaniels. He made Mac Jones something in his rookie year. So I think bringing in a set system for a young guy like May is a good thing. Maybe it limits your ceiling, and you're hoping that Drake May's athletic gifts can overcome that ceiling. But I think bringing in McDaniels and just having a set system and scheme over Van Pelt, who called plays last year, who had never called plays before. He had been like a game plan OC for his entire career. I think it's a good thing. It's all about the talent, because I think they have the worst O-line and the worst set of pass catchers in football. They need to really overhaul that room to make it look like a sound, functioning system. But I'm bullish on what a McDaniels OC, because he's not going to leave. He's a play caller. He's not going to leave for anybody.
I guess that's a good way of putting it. But if that's like your number one selling point, I don't know. I'm not.
Patriots like their guys.
Yeah. Did I miss any assistant coaching hires?
I'm surprised you missed one. Dallas hired Matt Eberflus as the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good one. He was on their staff 2011 to 2017 as a linebackers coach, so familiarity as we have some of these. The Lions hired John Morton from Denver, their passing game coordinator, to be their offensive coordinator. So they went outside of the organization from that Sean Payton tree, which is kind of what Ben Johnson grew up in with Dan Campbell being a tight ends coach. So he plucks from the Sean Payton tree, and then Kelvin Shepard as the defensive coordinator, the linebackers coach in Detroit. So they just upgraded him. I know they upgraded Hank Fraley too to keep him around, their offensive line coach. Now he is the run game coordinator. So you got something good brewing there. Seattle hired Clint Kubiak to be their offensive coordinator, the former Saints offensive coordinator. You really got to bolster up the interior line if you're going to run that system, because he comes from the Shanahan, he comes from the McVay. A lot of inside-outside zone and stuff like that. Not a lot of gap scheme stuff. So you're going to have to bolster up your line to really do that. But Geno is impressive enough to overcome that. And then lastly, did this happen today or yesterday, but the Ravens hired Chuck Pagano to be a senior secondaries coach. I thought that was fun. I think it's just another way to get another, just as Spags or Vic, just get a guy who's been around football a long time and who wants to coach football, just get him in the room. And for these moments, that's kind of what this feels like to me. It's not for the 17-game marathon. It's for those one-game plan-oriented playoff games, and you just want to have another guy in the room that can make those decisions and be ballsy in a way. So yeah, I liked that. But those are all the big ones.
Yes. No, I liked the Flus one. I think it gets his tenure obviously with Chicago overshadows all of the good things he did on the defensive end of the football, both there and with the Colts. But again, it goes back to what you're saying with Josh, a guy that you know what you're going to get from him and is not going to leave. It's along the same lines of the Dennis Allen hiring. Yeah. So, but moving on to weekly review here, talking about the 2 championship games that we witnessed. To be frank, didn't watch. We'll start with the Bills and Chiefs because I'm sure that's what everyone wants to hear more.
Yeah.
Did not watch the first half of this game. We had people over at our house, so I didn't watch the first half of the game. I did watch the whole second half. It was a very enjoyable game to watch. The Bills had a chance to do it, and I hate to say this because I know this is going to get a lot of people upset, but if you are playing in a close enough game, and I said this in 2023, the 2022 season after the Eagles lost the Super Bowl, and I said it after that call as well, if you were playing a team close enough that the referees can decide the game, then you're not playing it well enough. I know people don't want to hear that because right now the hot, topic right now is the refs are helping out the Chiefs and everything. But if you're playing a game close enough that it can impact it, you've made poor decisions, which I'm sure you're going to get into, and you weren't playing well enough. And I just think it's funny too that we saw in back-to-back weeks the starting tight end on either team essentially cost their team a chance to win the game in Mark Andrews and Kincaid. But you watched the full game. What are your thoughts?
I thought the Bills on offense in the first half it was so weird to what I've seen all season. There was a lot of drop back. There was I think there was less than 10 rushing attempts in the first half, which they had not done all season long. I was confused by that. And then they came out of the second half. They got a fumble on Mahomes. They scored 7 off that fumble. So they were kind of getting the things going their way. The catch, no catch. I know we've debated this around. The ball didn't move. The ball didn't move. Stands is called. I think Worthy kind of got his hand inside the 2 hands of Cole Bishop. And so you can justify him bringing it down and having control of it. Because when the ball does hit the ground, I'm not saying it didn't. It just didn't move. And I know a lot of people brought up the Dez catch. And it's like, yeah, that was a bad call. And they've kind of since referenced that. But yeah.
Look at the Zach Ertz catch in the Super Bowl. That's what happened. Yeah. I mean, like Zach Ertz, game-winning catch in the Super Bowl was basically a spitting image of that catch. Obviously without the defender there. But it was the same thing. He had control. Just because the ball hits the ground doesn't necessarily mean it's a drop. Yeah. As long as the player has control. Anyways, not to cut you off.
No, you're absolutely correct. And even then, that was my thought is there was a holding on that play. So the Chiefs would have gotten the ball in the red zone at the 20. They scored within 2 plays, so there was 2 minutes left for Josh, and Josh goes down and scores. So actively, if they were at the 20, you could have made the case that they would have had less time. Maybe they hold them to 3, maybe they get an interception. Nobody knows, but it didn't happen. But I think this game was won and lost with the 2-point conversions. And what I mean by that is Buffalo went for 2 2-point conversions, and they went 0 for 2. Kansas City went for 1 and got it. Well, if my math is correct, that's a 3-point swing. Oh, the Chiefs won by 3 points. Oh, no. This is what the Chiefs can do to you is they make their margins so thin that you feel like you have to chase points in the first half, just as Washington did in the early game. You feel like your margins are so thin, you need to get within that 3-point threshold, and you don't get it. And now you're playing from this deficit, this 1-point deficit that you want to have later in the game, because if you think about it, just math in my head, say they take it. It's 17-21. Say they still score the James Cook's touchdown. It's 24-21. Mahomes scores a touchdown. It's 28. They have no reason to go for 2, so it's 28-24. You score another touchdown and they kick a field goal. It's a tie game. So that Butker kick to take the lead late in the fourth quarter would have been to tie the football game if you took your points when given. So it's just fascinating that the margins are that thin, and it sucks for Buffalo because they keep getting this close. And I know it probably sucks because it's the same guy. 4 out of the 5 years, it is the same football team. But I just want to make it's not just Mahomes. Like, the thing about Mahomes that's so fascinating to me is that he's like running an Alex Smith offense. There's nothing down the field. It's a lot of yak. It's a lot of within 10 yards, and you're going to make the play. Like, the Worthy drag route was a perfect example. That's how they create their explosive. They just get yak and turn it upfield because Mahomes isn't going to make that deathly mistake. He made it in the first half, but he got rid of it. He didn't have a mistake the rest of the game. But, yeah, man, they just grind you into the dust. And I thought Buffalo had a great opportunity, and the Josh Allen did he get the first down? Did he not get the first down? Maybe just don't run left every single time on your QB. That was
awful. That was head scratching. I saw it. It was bad.
I was like, what? Why are we not getting him on a zone? Why are we not running him to the right? Why are we not getting him in the pistol and getting him some head of steam? We're just pushing. And if your quarterback doesn't squat 600 pounds, it doesn't fare well for most teams. But yeah, it was a very entertaining game. I don't like taking away from the football game. I don't like taking away from those moments where Spags on 4th and 5 because I studied that play this week. Chris Jones is lined up on the left edge. The two-man blitz comes from the right. So if that blitz doesn't get home, you're setting Chris Jones up on a one-on-one on the left side. So you're kind of just, you want the blitz to get in, and it does get in. But you still have that little backup plan of, we have Chris Jones in a one-on-one because we're sending a blitz pressure, so we're going to get him in a one-on-one. And if we need him to make a play, he definitely can. But it came down to a few moments, and the Chiefs just have more, just a little bit. They continue to do it, and I know it's frustrating, but they won 15 games for a reason. They only lost 1 game in the regular season with Mahomes playing at quarterback, and it was against this Buffalo team, so they avenged that loss in a way. So yeah, I know I'm probably rambling about this game, but it was
you're good. Game. That's what I want. I enjoyed it from for that second half that I watched, and again, it just comes down to when it matters the most, this team knows how to win. And again, Spags, man, he is something special. That is for sure. He is up there with the best DCs in the entire league, if not the best. It was a fun game, and we'd be remiss to not mention that the media in general, and there were even some calls myself that I did not necessarily agree with, like the 4th down conversion with Josh Allen, and the refs did help them out a little bit. But again, I think it's the Chiefs. They win these kinds of games. That's what makes good teams great. And that is what it is. And and again, I know it's unpopular right now, and people aren't a big fan of wanting to hear any of that, but it's just how that game turned out. So moving on to the game that I, of course, watched all of from start to finish, the Commanders versus the Eagles. Eagles absolutely blew them out. They had like a 32-point differential, and honestly, I think there were more egregious calls in this game than there were in that Chiefs-Bills game. Ended up not mattering either way, because when you have 3 forced fumbles, you recover all of them. You score on every single turnover that you get. And again, you have the 32-point differential. Those calls don't make or break it. They were clearly the better team out there today, but I do think this game was actually probably worse refed. It just, the Eagles were significantly the better team in this game. Jalen showed that he can get it done from the pocket. That's like watching him. I really loved that. He had a 71% completion rating, 246 yards, a touchdown, and 110 QB rating. He looked good from the pocket today, and the passing game actually showed up, which is something that you had concerns about. I had concerns about in the previous 2 games. So it was good to see in a game in which Saquon is firing on all cylinders, this passing offense is firing on all cylinders, what can truly happen and what this offense can look like. They hung up 55 points, which is the most in a championship game in the history of the NFL. And that's what can happen when this offense is firing on all cylinders. So it was really great to see that this team still had it in them. And that's why I enjoyed it so much. And like I said, the 3 forced fumbles really, really helps. I think Jaden Daniels had a very good game. And outside of Zach Ertz, his team let him down. I think he played well, but I don't know how many other people on the field were kind of ready to play at this stage against a team that was this good. Lattimore being one of them. He is having a very, very bad, last few games. Got in a fight with a scuffle, I'll say, with AJ at one point. Lattimore didn't look good. And then also, it's not necessarily game related, but that Frankie Louvu stuff on the goal line was just so much fun to watch.
I thought it was great. I thought it was awesome.
I enjoyed it.
I thought everyone was right. Everyone was right. He was trying to time the snap in kind of like WWE Jalen Hurts. And Philly comes out and says, all right, we're just going to hard count every time. He's going to jump. He's going to jump over. We're just going to hard count every time. And I thought that was really silly.
I thought it was.
The ref was really upset. He's like, we're gonna award Philly a touchdown if this doesn't stop. He was upset.
Yeah, no, he was upset, and that's the first time a lot of people had. I was aware of the rule previously, just because of my time, messing around in Madden and college football. But that's the first time in a game that I've heard it actually brought up before. And again, for those who didn't have the pleasure of watching that, the ball was not snapped here. The ball was not snapped. Again, like Matt said, he was trying to time it up, and he just kept, and he did it twice. And then I think Jonathan Allen jumped the snap at one point too, and the rest were pretty upset with it.
They were not happy.
No, they were not. But again, in total, I was very, very happy watching this game. But from the Commanders side, again, I think there's a lot to take away from this entire season in the year that they had, the 1 year turnaround. And again, Jaden Daniels looked very good in all 3 playoff games. Again, he didn't win this last one, but he's looked very good in all 3 playoff games. He looks like he's ready to play at this level when it matters the most. I'm excited to see what the Commanders are going to do over the next couple years. But your thoughts on the game?
Number one, Saquon Barkley. What Saquon Barkley did to transform this football team. First play of the game, toss crack. Did you see A.J. Brown throw that killer block on the outside? He set the edge. That was awesome.
And then Jordan Mailata
inner excellence.
Used him to pancake him into 2 other blockers.
Yeah, and Saquon just gets one crease. And this was a damned if you do, damned if you don't game for Commanders, because it was, all right, going into this game from the time they played Week 16, they had a lot of success against Barkley in cover 1, in single high, cover 3, cover 1, mostly cover 1. And so it was kind of, well, if we play cover 1, then we're making the passing game simple, because Hurts is really good at reading out man, and he's got 2 killer receivers who destroy man coverage. So that first snap, they bring out cover 1, and they say, all right, we're going to get to the edge. And they just force their tacklers. I think Saquon broke 3 tackles that play, and instantly that place was supercharged. I remember the 4th and 5 he had in pass protection. I know people were really upset about a holding call, that 4th and 5. Oh, it should have been a holding on Saquon Barkley. He's a running back in pass protection against Frankie Louvu. That was awesome. He threw his weight around on that. If you're complaining about a hold on that play, then you just want to complain, because that was awesome for me. I was like, you forget he's 230. And he just throws his weight when he wants to and makes that key protection and sets up A.J. Brown down the left seam, and it's a chunk play. And that was the last time it really felt like the Commanders were in it. And then from the Commander side, you can't fumble the ball 3 times. I learned something this week that they saw that there was a cut-up montage of every single Charles Tillman peanut punch. So they knew how to attack the leverage and the angles. They really had a plan of like, all right, Jaden's not going to throw us the ball. He's not going to make a killer interception. He almost did early in that second on that deep crosser. And I think like watching it, it was man. And he just didn't expect that safety to go with him. He was kind of shaded towards Terry. And so he just lobs it down, gets a break. But they really had a plan of like, Jaden's not going to throw us the ball in an interception situation. So we got to punch at it. We got to go get it. We have to force our turnovers that way. And they did it 3 separate times. They did it to De'Ami Brown. How does that ball not roll out of bounds? I have no idea. Oren Burks making a play. They get one right before the half. That was the killer to me because that was the time where it was Washington down by a possession. You could make this the last possession. You can get points. Nope. Philly punches it out, scores 7. And then the last one, the Eckler, was within 11, so it was still a game. And then that was one of the issues I had with Jaden. He kind of short-arms some throws, and he short-arms that throw. Eckler has to come back and get it. And as he's getting up, boom, punching at the ball, making a play. Philly's going on to the title game. They had 7 rushing touchdowns in this game? That's like that's the most in a playoff game ever. It's only happened like 5 times in the last so odd years. Just very impressive stuff from Philly. Again, this Super Bowl is the 2 best teams from like the middle of the season to now, in my opinion, because you know you could bring up the Lions, you could bring up the Bills. I understand. But the Lions and Bills always had the defensive concerns where these teams didn't. You know, the biggest concerns on each of these teams is, you know, maybe Hurts taking too many sacks, which, by the way, Hurts played his best game of the season to me as a passer. Everything was he was just ball out. That's what I want from him. Just getting the ball out, make it simple for me, and I'm going to get the ball out to these guys and move the chains, and that's what he did. And then on the Chiefs side, man, it's just, can you hang around in these games long enough that you feel like you have a chance in the fourth quarter? It's going to be a fascinating Super Bowl. I know we'll talk about it next week, but
yes, we're gonna preview all of that next week. Obviously, we're not previewing the Pro Bowl or anything this week because why would we?
No, Drake May's a Pro Bowler. I want to talk about the Pro Bowl now.
But again, it was a fun game, and it's going to be a fun matchups that I already have, or a fun matchup that I already have a lot of formulated thoughts and opinions on. So can't wait to talk about that. But what everyone has probably been waiting for at this point, something we teased last week, something I teased at the start of the episode, it is the Pigskin Project's first mock draft of the season. Obviously, we're gonna take a hiatus next week, and then after that, we'll probably pump them out every single week. But first Pigskin Project mock draft of the year, and we will be calling Ryan. Got confirmation that Ryan does want to be called and consulted about this Bears pick, and I think we'll let him make the pick. I hope he makes the right pick, but I think the guy I want there is going to be taken by one Matt Hartman. So,
all right, you want me to share the screen?
Yeah, go ahead. We can get started here.
All right. Let's see. Is it up?
It is not. Oh, there it is. I have to add.
There we go. There we go. All right, let me close these tabs. All right. So every team, is there any team that doesn't have a first rounder that's like noticeable?
Not that I can.
Does every team have their first round pick?
Which is wild.
That's insane. Never seen that. All right, let's get into it. No trades. Let's start.
Yeah.
How do you want to divvy this out?
Your team is picking odds. Obviously, mine is yet to be decided. Hopefully, we'll be picking evens at 32. But since your team is picking odds, I will give you the great pleasure of figuring out whatever player you want to be taking here with the Titans #1 overall. Really interesting to see what, are they going to lean BPA? Are they going to lean the quarterback? I mean, those were the reports coming out, is they might take BPA. They might say, screw the quarterback position. We're going to figure it out. So I'm interested to see what route you go here.
Yeah, I think this is up to 3 players. I think it's up to the quarterback, Cam Ward, here out of Miami. I think Cam Ward is the best quarterback in the draft. I think if I stuck him in last year's draft, I would have had him at 4. I know that's a debate, but I would have had him over McCarthy. I really liked Nix. I liked Nix more than McCarthy last year.
Yeah.
I would have had Cam in my 20s, where I had both of those guys last year low 20s, 28, 29, and then Penix was way off. I had no idea he would be a top 10 pick. But Cam Ward, his overall talent, the arm angles, the arm he has, it is an A- arm. It's not an A+, it's not Josh Allen, it's not Herbert, but it is a serviceable arm at the next level, and his creation ability is real deal. So I think if you wanted to go quarterback, Cam Ward is definitely the name you want to take. I think Tennessee, I'm gonna agree with them. I'm gonna go with their generation. We're not gonna pass on a generational player at #1. And it's not Travis Hunter, it's Abdul Carter. I think Abdul Carter is the best player in this draft. I know you wanted to take him at 2. I know that sigh, but man, he is a ready-made product for me coming in. It's hard not to comp him to Micah Parsons, but oh wait, he's 15 pounds heavier and more polished as a rusher than Micah ever was at Penn State.
Absolutely.
So this guy, I want to get my hands on him. If they don't trade out of this pick, which they can't in our mock draft right now, I think we'll get more talking points at the combine. They'll talk to other teams, see who wants to buy, who really wants Cam Ward, because I think Cam Ward is serviceably the best quarterback in this draft, and I don't think anyone's going to disagree. So it all comes down to, who wants him. And I think Tennessee would be willing to trade out of that pick. So
yeah, no, like you said, I think that pick is between the 3 players, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, and Ward. And heck, I mean, even eventually if they want to move back to 3 and say we're okay with taking Travis Hunter there and picking up an extra first round pick,
I think that would be a great scenario for them. We're giving up the quarterback, but we're moving down to 3. We're still getting a player we prioritize, and we get extra capital. So, yeah.
Yeah, why not? No, yeah, you made that difficult. We'll both agree Abdul Carter is definitely the best player in this draft, without a doubt. I think there's only one way you can go with this Browns pick. Again, Abdul Carter is who you want. But I think they would be... We'll get into my thoughts on him as a player later on. But since I'm kind of going a little bit more consensus with the draft, I'll go with Travis Hunter. I feel like that's the pick that makes the most sense currently. Again, I have different thoughts and opinions on Travis Hunter and his value in the NFL and in terms of being a two-way player. To be frank, if you want a wide receiver, Tet McMillan's better. If you want a corner, Will Johnson is better. And I'm not fully convinced Travis Hunter is going to be playing both ways at the end. I think he will play some both ways, but I don't think he's going to be playing, obviously, both ways the same way that he is at the college level. But just, kind of sticking a little bit to consensus, we'll go Travis Hunter. That way they give him options, whether they want to play him at wide receiver or corner, which is a need on either side.
I think after he sees what T. Higgins makes in free agency, I think he's going to want to be a wide receiver.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah. All right. I mean, makes it easy. They don't have to move. They need a quarterback very bad. We're going Cam Ward with the New York Giants. I already went on my spiel with Cam Ward. But again, the Giants side, they need to take a quarterback. They need to leave this draft with a quarterback. And if you don't get Cam Ward, it's going to feel like a swing and a miss to me, because A lot of these guys, man, are just either they're developmental projects that have the talent, like a Ewers or a Milrow, or they feel capped out. Like a Will Howard or a Dylan Gabriel, and definitely Shador, man. Shador in the top 10 is just, it is hard for me to get there. I have him, right now, I think I have him in the 30s. So I have him as like a second round, like a day 2 pick, like a firm day 2 pick. And I don't know, man. I can't.
I couldn't agree.
Can't get there in the top 5.
No, I couldn't. He's QB3 for me. I think I've made my opinion zone on him. There's nothing that Shador does that really stands out to me, and there's a lot of concerns in his game that I am not the biggest fan of. I know a lot of people are even like, well, maybe he's QB1. He's firmly QB3 for me in what I value at the quarterback position, but I'm probably getting tricked by one Jalen Milrow. But that's besides the point. Another very, very easy pick for me. I feel like it has to be Tet. Go ahead and get your franchise quarterback weapons, something that they very, very much lacked throughout this entire season. And I think I would be very shocked if he's not at the board here, even in real life. Tet makes the most sense. Again, he's definitely the best pass catcher of anyone in the draft this year.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. I think it's up to Campbell or him at that pick, and I think grade wise I would have Tet higher, and it's receiver. We want to take receivers for this guy. I think you really want to get a primary X guy for Drake May, and you're not going to get another opportunity to get a guy as talented as McMillan later in this draft, where there's a lot of good linemen. I'll say that. 5 with the Jaguars. This one is interesting. I think you could go corner, opposite side of Tyson Campbell. You can go Will Campbell. You could get, another receiver in there. Probably not, but Josh Simmons is very intriguing. But I think you have to go. You have to go with Mason Graham. Just the value is too perfect for him. They signed Arik Armstead from the Niners this season. He was a major disappointment. If you can get a real guy who can win one-on-one in the interior like Mason Graham can, these edge rushers are really going to feast off that. And you have Trayvon Walker, who kind of broke out this year, had double-digit sacks again, and Josh Hines-Allen, who signed a big contract last year. So you're set right now, and you could really create a formidable defensive line, comparison to Saxonville from a few years ago when they made the AFC Championship game. So it makes a ton of sense for me. It's just the perfect value. Mason Graham is my 4th player. So, again, I have to take the best player available.
Yes. Yeah. No. And like you said, the big thing about Mason Graham, especially within this Jags defense, is his ability to free up those edge rushers that you mentioned there. That'd be the exact pick I would make too. And I mean, we're just going to continue on with, I feel like, to be what the easy pick is and what probably consensus would also say is here for the Raiders. They could do numerous ways. Some people say Shador. Again, it is way too rich for my blood. A lot of people would say Shador. A lot of people want to talk about his accuracy. Upwards of 40% of his throws were RPOs and screen passes. I sure hope that you're accurate. I have questions about his ability to navigate the pocket, his ability to get throws out on time. I don't think he has a plus arm. I think people want to tout him as this plus athlete, when in actuality, I think he's a fine athlete. I don't think he's a plus athlete. For all those reasons, I can't, again, stomach taking Shador here at this point. And then I look down the rest of the roster, I look at the players available, and I'm thinking, what position and what player is going to fill one of our big needs? And that's Will Johnson to me. Will Johnson, I feel like, slides in. They need help at corner. He's cornerback 1. And a guy at this caliber, I mean, he gets overshadowed by a couple other guys in this class because there's that top end talent in this class. But Will Johnson is a cornerback 1 in pretty much every draft. So. Oh, it was Matt who lagged out. Uh-oh, I thought it was me, guys, who lagged out there. Matt's gonna go ahead. He's gonna get his Wi-Fi kind of figured out and pulled up and fixed. I refreshed my page because I did think it was me. So I do apologize for everyone, but I'll go ahead and I'll load up the mock draft simulator on my screen, and we can go ahead and we can get started here for my screen, and I'll fill in the picks so far that we have made. And we'll see if this is a a solo pod on my end, which would be interesting, that's for sure. But as always, we're gonna do all of them just like we did before. We're gonna kind of zoom out here a little bit. We're gonna start, and we're gonna fill in the picks as they were made. Abdul Carter was taken number 1 overall, and then we turned around and we took what I thought was the easy next pick to make here. Whether I agree or disagree with that pick. Oh, the man.
Let's give you somebody to talk to.
Yes.
Yeah.
What I feel to be the easy pick in terms of consensus here with Travis Hunter, and then we moved on. Cam Ward blessed the Giants with falling all the way down to this point. Let's see where he's at.
For the record, I was following along. I don't think Cam Ward would fall this far because of the quarterback needy teams. Obviously, we're not going to be trading or anything like that. I'm sure you guys have probably discussed that already, but I would assume a trade had been happening by now. So, if that's the scenario, the Cam Ward's not falling to 3, but the Giants would be the one to make that pick if they do.
Yes, no, exactly. I really think, as you were saying, I don't think that the Titans are gonna, like, if they want to go BPA and they want to take one Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, something like that, even a Ted or Mason Graham, they're gonna trade out, stay within the top 5. But like we said, we're not doing a mock. But like you said, yeah, I don't think there's any way in real life that he does make it this far. So Will Johnson was where we left off. Like I said, I tried to go with teams that a team need in terms of like what they need, and then the BPA. And for me, it was clearly Will Johnson. Will Johnson would slide in. He'd be the cornerback 1 in virtually every draft outside of some of these more stacked classes. You would absolutely be cornerback 1 in this most recent class here. Brian, do you want to pick for the Jets?
Not to doogie on your pick, dude, but I'm surprised he didn't go G&T to the Raiders. With how awful that running back room was this year. But I get it. There's more needs on that team, hence why Ben Johnson didn't go there. Anyways, just want to rub that in. So for the Jets, it's interesting. Because Aaron Rodgers is not really the guy that you want for the future, but I'm not thinking quarterback. I'm not thinking running back either. You need a DB. What's our safety situation like? I don't know.
Well, DJ Reed, the starting safety, is hitting free agency this year, and he's basically outright said that he is not returning.
Go ahead and go with Starks then, just to be safe and draft the replacement. Starks is a really good safety coming out of Georgia. Obviously safety number 1. But, I think that it's going to be a very serviceable guy that's going to be able to step right into that role and fill the shoes pretty well.
Yeah, no, I think, again, at a in a class in which there are not many guys that stand out to be this top level talent. Malachi Starks is one of those guys, obviously at a less valued position. We don't usually see these safeties taken. But yeah, in a class that doesn't have a lot of blue chip prospect and first round grades, if you're the Jets, why not go and get yourself a guy that can step in and be a blue chip player right away and continue to make a good secondary. I know Sauce had kind of a down year in terms of what we expected from him going into the season, but hey, go ahead and pair him up with one of the better corners in the entire league and carry on. So you won't hear any arguments from me for that pick. Now this is where it gets interesting for me. I think kind of that Jets pick based off of the board is when we can kind of start seeing a little bit of variation with this draft. If you would have asked us 2-3 months ago, Ryan would have been in the same boat. I would have been in the same boat. Matt would have been in the same boat. The pick would have been a Shadur Sanders at this point. But Bryce Young turned it on the last couple of weeks. I think they can wait another year, feel it out, see if they can continue to grow and develop Bryce Young. Now, this isn't the pick that I would have necessarily made. I think there are more needs on the defensive side of the ball. James Pierce is my edge too. I think they need to go out and they need to get someone to kind of help out rushing the quarterback and kind of getting there. James Pierce, and I want to preface that, absolutely 100% would have been my pick here in this scenario. The only reason I am not going with James Pierce is because I would have let Matt step in and make this pick, because this is not a conversation that you hear.
He is here.
Many people. Oh, he is here now, Matt.
I don't know if he's.
Okay.
I don't know if his connection is.
Hello.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. So I was setting the stage for you at 8. I was talking about how I would have went with James Pierce.
This is unbelievable podcasting right now.
Unbelievable. We planned on posting this separately, but I don't think we can at this point. I was setting the stage, though, if you missed it, for James Pierce to be the pick here. But I added the caveat that you would have not went the same way with this pick. And it was a hot take, a take that pretty much virtually no one has even thrown out in terms of a different player. Do you want to pitch that? I'll give you this pick because I know this is a pick that you wanted to make at this point.
Who'd you take at 7? Malachi Starks. Okay. With the Panthers, Genty. I would take Genty.
And even though they just I'm just going to go ahead and talk about what people are probably asking. They just extended Hubbard. What's your thoughts with that?
Yeah, they just extended Hubbard and drafted Jonathan Brooks, who had his second ACL tear in 2 years. I just want the most explosive guy in the draft here. I just want a guy who is going to come in and create explosive plays for Bryce Young because they don't have it. It's Thielen, it's Jalen Coker and Xavier Legette. They need another guy in the room, and I think they really need edge rushing help. But again, I don't think there's a guy comparable to what Genty is on the board right now.
Yeah, it was the same conversation that we had with Starks. There's only a certain number of blue chips players, regardless of position at safety, at running back within this draft class. Guys that are blue chip have first round grades, and Genty is one of those guys, especially for an offense that lacks high end skill position players. And I would be remiss to also not give you this pick as well. I'll give you this pick. I'll give Ryan his pick, and then I'll pick back up at 11.
The Saints.
Yes, the Saints.
The Saints. Oh, the Saints, the bane of my existence. It's got to be an edge rusher. It's got to be James Pierce. I think it's too easy for me to take James Pierce because I think he's the best player on the board here for the position of need. I think this team really needs defensive line help, really needs cheap defensive players. So James Pierce, easy pick here.
There you go. I that's where I would have went with 8. So you won't hear any arguments with 9. The only argument that you would ever hear for James Pierce specifically as a player from me would be this isn't the type of edge rusher that they tend to like. And that's obviously why you're going this way. Because it's a guy that they clearly need and are coveting and a guy that they are missing on this defense. But the Saints throughout history have never really leaned into these speed rushers that are kind of flamethrowers off the edge. But I think he is a perfect pick here. You won't hear me complaining. That's just me playing a little bit of devil's advocate here.
With the Bears pick. So
I wonder where you're going with this.
I know that's the thing. I was kind of hoping he was gone so I could be a little more creative. So yes, I'm taking a football break, quote unquote. You guys covered it earlier on. I was listening to the podcast because if I'm going to be away from it, I at least want to know exactly what's going on. And so while you guys are taking the first 5 or so draft picks, I'm kind of doing more research on more and more guys. Will Campbell's the normal pick. I get it. So, like, I'm going to go ahead and pick him just because I know it. So, go ahead and pick Will Campbell. I'll explain why. Just because, I mean, obviously he can move to the guard position, but he's listed as a tackle. I believe he played more left tackle snaps than right tackle snaps in college. So, if you're a little worried about Braxton Jones's injury going forward and maybe just overall durability and ability to play the game at a high level, starting level, maybe you want Campbell at tackle. That's something else that I also, considered as well. I'm not really as high on Josh Simmons as most people. If I were to go with a tackle in the first round, outside of Will Campbell, it would probably be Kelvin Banks. He's had a lot of consistency. Now, I understand that he had an ankle injury as well, but, it looked like he was able to play just fine in that first round. So, I mean, with that being said, you look at a guy like that who's played pretty consistently for the past 3 years at the left tackle position. If you're worried about consistency at that left tackle position after Braxton Jones went down with that injury, that would probably be the route that I would go. The other position that I had looked at was the edge rusher position. And James Pierce was the number 1 guy that I was looking at because unfortunately we're out of the realm of possibility for Abdul Carter. That dude's a freak. But the guy that I would have taken if it wasn't James Pierce would have been Mike Green. The guy made a lot of noise at the Senior Bowl, from what I understand. And so, not only that, I know, I mean, some people aren't really a fan of the pick just because it's a smaller school guy. He had 17 sacks this year as well. Overall, the dude's a freak. The thing is about the 2 edge rushers that just got, I don't want to say taken off the board now, but in the scenario Green would have been drafted, it would have been the last 2 edge rushers that got taken off the board between him and Pierce. Those guys have a little bit smaller builds in terms of their weight. You're looking at the 140s, and so something that I kind of considered as well is coming out of college, what kind of guy are you getting? I believe it was one of the Watt brothers that was coming out of college around 140s. And I'm not saying that these guys are the next, Watt brother, but what I'm saying is, it's not necessarily as much of a downside as what some people think. But, also thinking about it as well, these things can backfire. They're right. I mean, Leonard Floyd was one of those guys that was a little less in the lacking in the weight, group.
Yeah.
So, just wanted to let people know that there were definitely other options that I was thinking of pursuing. You can pursue interior offensive lineman in the second round if you want to. There's a guy from Alabama. I'm trying to think of his name. I think it's Booker, right?
Yep.
That's one of the guys I was considering, not at the first pick, but more so at the second, that the Bears have in the second round. In the scenario we were to go for, multiple round mock draft, which I'm sure is coming in the future.
At some point, yeah.
That's something that I was considering later on, which is why I was thinking about the edge rusher position. But just letting people know, research was done this week. I was not considering just tapping out and just forgetting about football for a little bit. But unfortunately, and the guys can vouch for me as well, not a happy camper with the league right now, and
For sure.
it's not a good headspace to be in. I'm gonna try and avoid that conversation at all costs.
Yes.
So
Yep.
I will see you
Yep.
guys next week. But the boys can take it from here for the rest of the mock draft. However, I do want to stick around for your guys' take on the pick.
No, okay. So in terms of the take on the pick here, I mean, it is either the third edge rusher in this class or the best offensive line in this class. And the only option at this point, I think, if you're a Bears fan, is you hope that GT falls and you get your option between Will Campbell and GT. And it really depends on what you guys do in free agency. Can you go out and shore up that offensive line and whatnot? But again, it came down to, do you want the third best edge rusher in the class, or do you want the best offensive lineman in the class? And I do think he projects definitely more at guard. If you need to kick him out and try to do the tackle experiment with him, I think it is a possibility that you could try. Again, I think the projection's a little bit better at guard, but again, for a team that really needed offensive line help, it doesn't matter if he plays tackle or guard in the league. You need it pretty much everywhere across that entire offensive line. You won't hear any pushback from me on that pick.
All right. Matt, if you have anything, otherwise we'll probably move on and I'll probably get out of here.
Yeah, just take the best player available at a position of need. That's what you did.
Yeah.
All right. Boys, I'll see you next week on the show, and everybody else as well. I miss it. I'm not going to lie, but at the same time, I needed this mental break. So,
Yep.
All right, boys, enjoy it.
And moving on again, best player available at a position of need for the Bears. It made sense. For me, I'm going to continue to kind of do this offensive line run a little bit here. I'm going to do a tackle. At this point, it's whatever tackle that suits your fancy. Josh Simmons has been a riser in this draft class. Matt's OT1 in this class. I think Calvin Banks was the popular name heading into the draft. A guy that's gotten a lot of buzz as of recently, and Josh Connerly, a guy that did absolutely just get put on his butt at the Senior Bowl by Mike Green, which was a very, very fun clip to watch. But nonetheless, he is a guy that is rising in this class. I'm gonna butcher his name. Do you know how to pronounce this Mizzou tackle's name?
Armand Membou.
A guy again too that has been kind of rising throughout the process. Just saying that he's been sick, hasn't really been able to participate much in the Senior Bowl. It would have been fun to see him go out and kind of practice against other guys. But again, he's sick. But at this point, it's whatever tackle suits your fancy. Trent Williams is not going to be here forever. He obviously showed that this season. He's getting up there in age. You have to find someone that can take over at his position, or so it's whoever you think. I'm going to show some love here. We're going to go with Josh Simmons. It was really, for me, between Simmons and Banks. Mabu and Connerly weren't really ever in the conversation for me at this pick. I'm going Josh Simmons. Easy pick.
Great pick.
Thank you.
Love it. Next we have Dallas, and Ashton Genty is off the board, so it makes it easier for me. Luther Burden. I think this team, again, just like the Panthers, they just need guys in the room that are explosive and make plays.
Yeah, I think it's the easy pick there. They need to help out. They need to help out Dak, and as much as I like Brandon Cooks and all that he's been throughout his career, he didn't really show up too much, and maybe I'm not looking at his stats and giving him his flowers, but in terms of just like watching Dallas games, he never really stood out the page for me. Go ahead and get another guy to continue to help out Dak. So I agree with that. And we're going to go with the other guy that I was thinking about taking for the Niners here. It's going to be Calvin Banks. We're going to continue to build this offensive line, try to keep Tua upright, something they really haven't been able to do. And whether that's Calvin Banks at tackle or Calvin Banks at guard, it was a position that we could have saw them draft in the first round last year. They ended up going another way just because of the way the board fell to them. And again, they've struggled to keep Tua upright. So go ahead and take your choice of whoever you think the best offensive lineman is, because they needed it at pretty much every position at this point. And I think Banks could play either. I'm not really leaning one way or the other on him. I think he projects close to the same at either guard or tackle, but go ahead, plug him in anywhere you see fit on your offensive line.
Yeah, he makes you better. Makes you better right away. Teron Armstead not getting any younger, and he gets hurt a lot. So,
yes,
excellent pick if he wants to be your future left tackle. This is where it gets interesting with the Colts. I think you could go multitude of ways. I think you could go with a secondary player. They just took Latu last year. They have Kwity Paye. So I'm not really thinking about edge, but I think I'm gonna buck my own trend here. I'm gonna go with Tyler Warren. I don't love it, but again, I think he's the best tight end overall on the board. I think you want to continue to put even more value into your, big draft picks, big money guys into the offense to really see if you have something with Anthony Richardson. And if you don't, then you can bring in another quarterback, and they can do just fine with the talent on this team. So I'm going to take Tyler Warren. Don't love it, but at the same time, love what it could help Anthony Richardson.
Exactly. Yeah, you go get Anthony Richardson. Again, it's kind of the same thing you said here with Dallas. Obviously at a different position, but go and help your quarterback out here. And tight end really has been a position that they haven't really been able to figure out at a high level in a long time. And you can plug him in that you don't even have to worry about it at that point. For me, this one's pretty straightforward with the Falcons. We saw it all season long. They were just not able to get to the quarterback at any level. And it's really between two players for me here at this point. Whatever way you stack your board here, I think Umam Allen is higher than majority of these guys that are ranked in front of him. But for me, it's between Mike Green and it is between Derek Harmon, if I can find it.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, where is he at? They have him ranked really low. That is ridiculous. But it's between either of these guys. Whatever guy you think is going to be able to get to the quarterback and help out your defense, which is something, again, that they were really sorely lacking at this point. I'm actually going to go Derek Harmon at this point. I like Derek Harmon. I think he showed that he can be a good pass rusher, and in previous seasons, he showed he can be a solid run defender as well. It didn't show up as much in this most recent season, but again, in previous season, he's shown that he can hold up against the run, and he is a very good pass rusher on the interior. He's definitely my DT2 in this class.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. The Cardinals, this would have been my pick. I would have gone Harmon here. No doubt about it. But I think I got to pivot to edge. And I'm going to go with my number one edge rusher on the board. I'm going to go Michael Williams.
Okay.
I think just the ball of clay. He wasn't a good pass rusher this season at Georgia, but overall he was a good run setter, the little things that you want. And I think he's a high floor player from that, system, and develop the pass rush moves as we go. And they took Darius Robinson last year. They're really hitting this D line. I think it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, No, you won't hear any pushback in terms of the position in the way that you view things. For me, from that pick, for the Bengals, it's pretty much anywhere on defense that you want to take, or a pass catcher, and it really comes down to where T. Higgins goes. Immediately, my mind goes to Colson. I'm worried that it would be reaching too high. But if we're talking about pass catchers, it is between Colson and Ibuka. Or not Ibuka, yeah.
Yeah.
It's between one of those two guys. And I still have not made up inside of my head which way I'm leaning. I'm open to hearing other opinions on this pick. In terms of Colson or Ibuka, or even some outside way, if something is really staring or glaring out to me that I'm missing. But if not, which way do you think you would go between these two guys?
Yeah, I would probably go with Ibuka. I think just putting him next to Chase, I think everyone next to Chase is just going to get better. And their plan at receiver is much more dire than their plan at tight end. I think you can bring back Gesicki pretty easily, where, T. Higgins is going to be a much harder process. So I lean Ibuka. I just lean receiver most of the time there. So, yeah, I think it's an easy pick to make. And then, Seattle. Seattle is interesting.
They're mad. They wanted Ibuka.
Yeah, I think you can make that case. This is where you get into the thick of it, and they have Leonard Williams, so it's not really a dire need to get an IDL. The interior linemen are whatever. I think you could make the case for M'Boue here. I won't take him here, but you can definitely make the case for M'Boue. Ooh, this is where it's interesting. I think I'll just take the best player on the board, and that's Mike Green. I think it's just looking at me. I think putting him. I think edge rusher is a need, and getting another guy in the rotation to kind of just circle around and get a NASCAR package going. I think you could also take Jalen Walker, but then again, much more projection with Jalen Walker than Mike Green. I think Mike Green is a ready-made guy, what you want, so can rush the passer right away. So, yeah.
That absolutely broke my heart. I was staring him down. I wanted him at 19 so badly.
It was between him and Shamar Stewart for me.
And to be frank, I think I'm gonna continue with the same thought process. I think I'm gonna go Shamar Stewart here. Continue to just build one of the best defensive lines in the entire league. You have a flamethrower of Yaya Diaby on the edge, arguably one of the best interiors in the entire league, with Kalijah Kancey and Vita Vea. That's why I really wanted Mike Green here at this point, and just build just an absolute just stacked defensive line. And I do think I'm gonna continue to do that thought process. It's just shame that there's not a linebacker in this class that really stands out to me. The only linebacker, there's not a guy besides Campbell that really stands out to me in this class that I feel like you have to have, whether you think, Walker is a linebacker or edge, up to you, whatever way you want to go about that. But linebacker is where I would have wanted to go, but there's no one that stands out in this class for me. I think I am gonna go Shamar Stewart here. And again, continue to just build a very, very good defensive line. This pick seems obvious. let's see if you go a curveball here.
Yeah, I think they're fine in the trenches. I think they're fine on both sides of the line. I think their offensive line played very impressive this year. I'm going to go Colston Loveland. I think that's who you were mentioning. I think Sean Payton wants to get a real deal tight end in there. He's the best receiver of the bunch. Just makes a ton of sense. Again, I think they could hope for Igbukah. I've mocked Igbukah here a few times, but of course he's off the board. So got to pivot. Go with Colston Loveland.
Yes, I agree with that. Sean Payton is going to be licking his lips and saying we have Jimmy Graham. Sean Payton would love to get one of these two guys, and the fact that he fell to 20 is he would love it. He would be ecstatic. That's absolutely where he wants to go. For me, it was really wide receiver for the Steelers, and there's not a wide receiver that like stands out to me at this point in the draft where they're picking, unless you're absolutely in love with Golden, which I am not. I like him. I think people may be inflating his stock a little bit more than what I do. And it really comes down to what corner do you want, because the two next best corners on the board, in my opinion, is Siobhan Revell and Benjamin Morrison. And both of these guys are guys that suffered season-ending injuries very, very early on in the process. And that makes evaluating which guy you think is better between the two of them a very difficult thing to do, because you don't have this past year on tape. And it's really whose medicals do you think are going to check out more? A corner is a position of need for them. Even Joey Porter has not stood out to me the way I would have hoped for him to. I'm going to go with Benjamin Morrison at this point. I really like what Siobhan Revell offers, and I think at the end of the day he will probably be a first-round pick. But I could see the argument for either one, but Benjamin Morrison is who I'm going to pick for them. He gives me a Steelers mentality kind of guy as well.
Yeah, you made it easy for me. I'm going to take Revel for the Chargers. I think they took the pot shots at corner. Tariq Still was a good player, but Fulton was a one-year contract. He could leave in this offseason. I think shoring it up. I think Revel, he had the knee injury, tore his ACL early in the process, but I think he is long and athletic and explosive, and he is very technically sound at he played at the American level. He didn't play in the SEC or the Big Ten, but I think this is a traits-driven league, and I think he has all the traits to be a star cornerback.
Absolutely. I love him.
And the Packers are really upset right now.
Yeah, well, and at this point, do you continue to want to, because that's who I was hoping would have fallen to me at 23.
Mm-hmm.
I do like Barron a lot. I don't know if he is a fit necessarily with what the Packers need. And part of me wants to say, screw it. He's a good player. And again, another first round talent, a guy that would be shocked if he makes it to day 2. And I feel like I'm kind of talking myself out of the easy pick with Barron. I could see them going interior defensive line. The pick there for me would be Walter Nolan. I think I'm going to do Barron, though. I think I'm going to pull it. He's a guy, as we've seen at Texas, play basically every defensive back position. I think he can do it all. I think, obviously, the slot suits him best. But with a guy like Jair Alexander most likely leaving this year, you have to continue to bolster that up and kind of fill someone to pick in his spot. I think Barron can do that.
Yeah, the Vikings are fascinating. I think there's a ton of ways that you can go. Of course, we know the Sam Darnold thing. We know they have $60 million, and if they franchise tag Darnold, that would be 40 of the $60 million. So I think they're going to roll into next year with JJ McCarthy, and they're going to shore up the rest of the parts.
Mhm.
I think I'm leaning interior lineman. I think that IDL. My apologies.
Got you.
But I just want to see if I'm missing a player. No. I think I agree with you. I think it's Walter Nolan here. I think he's been very impressive at the Senior Bowl. I think you could argue some other guys. I like Tyreek Williams. I like Kenneth Grant, but Walter Nolan, the size, the frame, the pocket pushing ability, I like him the most of the guys on the board.
I even like Lot. I like him a lot. But yeah, I agree. When you said interior lineman, you kind of made me clinch there a little bit because it's exactly where. And I don't even not that guy. Back to tackle here. Reverse.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is where the Texans need to shore guys up. I don't know, and I haven't done a deep dive yet on Mabu. Do you think he could translate into IOL?
I think so. I think a lot of these guys can move inside. I think he is a harder projection because I think he is a better tackle than guard. But yeah, I think if you want to phone a friend about an IOL, I can definitely help you here.
Let's hear. Are you gonna go Booker?
No, I'm gonna say Gray Zabel from North Dakota State with what I've seen at the Senior Bowl.
The Senior Bowl, yeah.
I think he right now with the board fitting, I think he's the best IOL on the board. I know it might be a little bit of a reach up into uncertainty, but I think if you're looking for a guard, I think he's the best guard.
For me, it's tough because I like Wyatt more. We'll phone a friend. We'll go Gray here. And again, the Senior Bowl, I'm sure, is something we'll touch on next week. Obviously, next week we want to spend the majority of the time talking about the Super Bowl, but we'd be remiss to not talk about the Senior Bowl and the risers, especially with, Higgins and Mike Green and what these edge rushers are doing and everything. So we'll mention it a little bit next week's podcast. So we have not forgot about the Senior Bowl. Me and Matt have literally been watching this. I was in class today watching the Senior Bowl. So believe me, I'm paying attention. You know exactly where I want to go with this pick, but you are making the pick here.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to do here. I think there's a defensive guy I would like to take. Doesn't really fit with their, it's an edge rusher. Get that known. But I think I would take Membu with the tackle struggles they had this year, shoring it up, getting a first round talent in there, and I think Membu is. I think it makes a ton of sense to just plug and play. You could take him along. You still have Joe Noteboom there, but I think you get this pick, you got to take a tackle and just see if you can ride out the rest of Stafford's years left. And maybe we think about quarterback later in the draft.
Yeah. For those who are wondering, obviously at this point, I don't think it makes much sense. You hope you can get there. I don't think it necessarily has to happen with pick 26. I would love to see Milroe go here because this is a spot in which he does not, at least hopefully, does not have to play right away with Stafford. I think probably coming back again. That's a little bit up in the air. He made a little bit of comments about that after the loss, but it's a place where Milroe would not have to start right away. You can sit back and kind of learn, and if you're going to learn from anyone, and McVay's the guy to do that from. So who I would love to see go, because you do not want to take Milrow in a position in which he has to pretty much play it all year one. You made that pick just that much easier for me. We're going to continue to see this offensive lineman roll off the board here. This is kind of the same range last year that we started seeing this pick up a little bit as well. I think they need a tackle. It was going to be between Connerly and Mambu here for me, and he's gone. So for me, the easy choice, which is funny because the rankings go perfectly and fit together. But the easy pick for me here is Connerly. They need to figure out this offensive line a little bit. Stanley's hitting free agency. I'm not fully convinced on Daniel there at left tackle. I know he's been up and down, but kind of someone needs to step in with Stanley and try to continue to keep this offense going so Lamar Jackson can continue to look like Lamar Jackson.
Now, this is where I'm going to take my edge rusher. One of my favorite edge players in the class, Princely Umanmian.
Yes!
Speed, length, off the ball quickness. I think he's one of the best players. He's one of my favorite players. Maybe he's not one of the best, but I think he's going to find himself into the first round with his testing, his measurables, his Senior Bowl ability. And I think it's a great fit next to Aiden Hutchinson, that he can come in and not have to be a superstar, but can just be a productive piece on a championship caliber team.
Yes. No, I absolutely agree. I continue to find someone that can go alongside Hutch there and rust the passer. He was a guy that I would have hoped fell to 31 and get him in the Eagles building. Again, you won't hear any pushback from me. The Commanders are in a position where I don't think there's anything necessarily that stands out to me as a huge like need we need to fill outside of wide receiver. And again, it goes back to, is there someone that stands out to you on this board in terms of guys? And there's still, at this point, I think after those first few guys get taken, no one that stands out to me. This is where it gets difficult. The last couple mock drafts I had done for the Commanders, they were not picking this high. I might just bite the bullet and get them help at wide receiver. I don't think I'm going to go Golden. No. I think I'm going Ayumanner. I absolutely love Ayumanner. I think he's going to be so much fun to watch. And I think there's plenty of guys that can do what he does in the second round if you want to push that off and wait. But I think Ayumanner would be a nice fit alongside of Terry, someone that can give you the size and kind of the possession catch that you need, that Terry doesn't necessarily offer in his own right.
All right, Buffalo. I think this is
please.
This is easy. If I don't think he's been taken, but Jalen Walker.
No,
I think Jalen Walker makes a ton of sense. He's versatile. They're gonna need edge help in a few years. Von Miller continues to get older, and Greg Rousseau is going to come up for a contract here soon. So getting Jalen Walker in the building, I think it makes a ton of sense. I know.
You made me cry.
You're heartbroken.
I am heartbroken. For those of you who are new, for the last 2 years now, I've been pounding the table for the Bills to take someone on the interior of the defensive line who can stop the run a little bit. And it continues to be an issue, and we've seen it. We saw it in that third quarter with Derrick Henry, and obviously didn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it continues to be a very, very sore spot. Obviously, there's a lot of help that needs to be had on that defense in general. I'm not going to be upset with the player you took. I think they're sorely lacking someone in the interior of that defensive line. So that's why I was kicking, screaming, and doing all of that for Kenny Grant, because he's the perfect player that I would have hoped. But yeah, I think Walker is a fine player there. Him as a prospect and as a player, I think this is the range he's going to go in. And I think, yeah, I have no issue with the player that got taken there. This is where it gets really interesting. The Eagles have the best roster in football, and I don't think that's really a hot take, or at least the most well-rounded roster in all of football. There is not really a need that stands out to me. You could go guard if you want to, with Becton hitting free agency. You could go offensive tackle to kind of hopefully sit back, learn from Lane, and step in whenever Lane decides to retire. But Lane is still at the top of his game. I would have loved to take a tight end here, continue to get pass catchers for him. I love Dallas, and Dallas has had a heck of a playoff run, but his contract is up at the end of next year. I don't think you have the money to pay him, and I don't think he is someone that will probably be re-signed at that point. But he's not here either. I'm going to go with my guy. This won't come as a surprise to Matt. I am going Ursery here. Ursery, to me, has all of the tools in which you would want, for the most part, from a tackle. He has the size, and for a guy that is big as he is, he moves shockingly well. And that was like what had blown me away when I remember watching him in I know people aren't in agreement with me on this one, but I remember watching him being like, I wouldn't be shocked if he goes higher than the Eagles pick at this point, because again, I think his combination of size and as well as he moves at that size is something that we don't often see. And we've seen Jeff Stoutland be able to mold these guys. Ursery is the way I'm going to go. And it's perfect because Ursery is a guy that probably shouldn't start right away anyways. And he can sit back, learn from the best right tackle in all of football, develop his traits, go to Stoutland University, and become the predecessor, something that Howie has done in the future. We saw the same. That's what they took Landon Dickerson for, to back up Jason, and end up not mattering because he kicked out to left guard. And then we took Jerkins for the same reason. He sat back, he learned from Jason Kelsey his first year, and he's a very good center in his own right. So it's something Howie has shown the want and desire to do. Go back to Howie roots, draft the offensive lineman. Yanti Ursery, you are a Philadelphia Eagle. I was also, for those wondering, Cameron William would have probably been the pick if Ursery wasn't there. Another tackle that I think can be very good, but definitely should not start right away either. Your thoughts? Oh, he disappeared on me, guys. Oh, I have to add him back, maybe? He muted himself. I have no clue.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can be heard.
Are you kidding? This internet thing re-kicks on at pick 30. This is elite podcast from me. Don't worry, this will be much better next week. I can only imagine. But yeah, I think here it's Jonas Savanier. I think you have to continue to keep taking shots at tackle. Hopefully you get it right one of these times. I think he's got all the athletic traits to fit at tackle, and you don't have to start him right away. But
yes, they tried to do it with Kingsley, and it has not worked out this point for them. So continue to take shots, build that offensive line for them. I know Ryan's not here, but we're going to do it anyways. We're going to round it out with Weddle. And if it works, awesome. If Matt can't for some reason, then we can go ahead and call it quits as well. But I like doing Weddle. I enjoy Weddle. It's something fun. Brings a little bit of competitive spirit to the pod. Do you want me to start, or do you want to go?
I'll start it off. I'm gonna go with Xavier Worthy.
Really helping me out here.
NFC offense guy.
Yeah, NFC offensive guy. really narrows it down. A guy that's at least somewhat older, at least a bit taller, not a wide receiver, which really makes me think he's a tight end. I just talked about him a little bit. I'll go with Dallas. East.
NFC East.
Has to be a quarterback.
It doesn't have to be.
I thought it was. I don't think. I thought it was just skill, unless it's a running back. But I don't think offensive linemen are in this. I could be wrong though.
No, is this hard?
No, this is easy. I thought. Maybe it's hard. It is hard. Womp womp womp.
That's okay.
Thanks.
So I mean, yeah, because I saw 6'5", and I was like, I don't know if there's any NFC quarterbacks. Daniel Jones is still around. Maybe it would be him. NFC East. So
not the Eagles. That's not where
Tyler Smith.
I like that one. I was thinking Eagles for some reason. I was like, well, it's obviously Landon Dickerson. Young guy. I think it's going to be between one of these two tackles, and I'm going to take my shot on one Evan Neal. And it's not one of the two tackles.
I mean, so it's got to be Brandon Coleman, the TCU tackle the Washington Commanders took this year. Started quite a few games.
Nope.
It was not.
It was not.
Oh no.
Oh no. Oh no. Gosh, I feel like I should know who their other tackle is. Yes, played him 3 days ago. Oh no. I have no clue. This is not a good look. But if anyone's standing out to you, feel free to shoot it. If not, we can always call it a no point, and I can start giving you hints.
I mean, there's no way. Is he 25? Is my only thing. Well, yeah, 23. Just shoot with Cosme.
Is Cosme that tall?
Cosme's a big dude. I'm just going to shoot with Cosme. If it's not Cosme, I have no idea.
Cosme's where my head went, but I didn't think Cosme. Okay. Well, there you go. Cosme's where my head went. It was Cosme. That's where my head went, but I thought there was no way it was Cosme because I didn't think
we started with a Texas guy. It ended with a Texas guy. I'd love to see it.
Yeah. So there you go. Make sure you guys tune into next week. We're going to obviously take a break from the mock draft next week and pick it up a little bit later. But next week we are going to be previewing the big game. I don't think we're technically allowed to say the name, but I don't think we're going to get copyrighted as a small podcast. I could be wrong though. But stay tuned to next week where we're going to be previewing the Super Bowl. That's pretty much where all of our focus is going to be, unless In some miraculous turn of events, the Saints decide to hire a guy. But stay tuned for that. Again, we're going to be talking about the Super Bowl, a little bit of our kind of takeaways, winners and losers of the Senior Bowl as well. Do you have any closing thoughts or opinions for us here before we let them go, Matt?
Yeah, just a little breaking news. My internet will be fixed next week. This was awful.
We were off to such a good start. It kind of giving you guys some inside information. The original plan was to obviously do the podcast and post the podcast as we normally would, but then separately cut out the mock draft and post the mock draft as its separate video on YouTube. Mm-hmm. But I think I am speaking for the three of us that will not be happening with all the technical difficulties that we had. But still, it was still fun. Love talking draft, love talking ball. Ryan should be back next week. Matt should have good Wi-Fi. Of course, right when my Wi-Fi gets better, Matt's Wi-Fi does not. But we'd like to. We would like to thank our sponsors in Uppercut Grooming, Regional Radio Sports, and Spotify for podcasters. And stay tuned for next week's episode. Make sure you guys follow us on all of our socials that are pinned up here. Thank you, guys.